all those things we have out there. Any of you forgot? Wait, let you go do it right now. No? Okay. I've got a plaque here from the National Society for the Sons of the American Revolution. And this is a certificate in commemoration. It is presented to the Bethany Historical Society in recognition for exemplary patriotism in the display of the flag of the United States. And they saw fit of sending this to us, and we're going to hang it over there. We're pretty proud of that. But we have a flag up there with a flag. I think we need more of that around the country. Okay, before we get going, do you all realize it's the 100th birthday? Oh. Telephone, Bethany.
Yes. I thought it was your birthday.
But somebody, thanks, Russ. But somebody that's almost that old is going to tell us more about that and bring us up to date. But we'll let Rob Burton bring you up to date on what we've been doing over in our building. If you haven't been by there, I wish you'd swing in and take a look at it. The grounds, everything, it's just coming along great, and we're really proud of that. So if you get a chance to swing in there and take a look. Even down back we have grass and it's all graded down. Looks nice. So without further ado, Bob will bring us up to date on everything that's going around the grounds.
Okay, perhaps you recall last time we met back in February when the temperature was a little more pleasant than it is tonight. We mentioned some of the things that were done at the Historical Society and a few of the things that remain to be done. And we virtually completed those few things that remain. We have installed storm windows, gutters and leaders on the building. We have had topsoil spread, graded around the building. Dougie Riley donated his time and his machinery to grade the building, around the building, and as Timer said, even in the back of the building, where there was a steep bank, now we have a more gentle slope. It's been seeded and paved and mowed, so that's how far we've gotten. We're able to mow the grass now. In addition to that, we had parts of the parking lot paved because some dug up construction, and we paved as much as we have money to do. So that's our progress report for the building. Yes. Beg pardon? Yes, I left the garden club out. The garden club, yeah, see when I don't use those? The garden club raised money by getting a grant, and they placed plantings around most of the front of the building. Very, very attractive. They put mulch around, and it just is a perfect complement to the building. And I would invite all of you to drive in there, drive around, park, get out and walk around it, because I think it really adds a lot to the center of our town. You know, we've had a lot of improvements in this area over the last couple of years, with the carriage shed being restored, the steeple being put on the Congregational Church, and the restoration of the Historical Society building. I think it's made a tremendous improvement. And the library addition, no notes. What I'm doing here is just killing time until the sun goes down. Anyway, yes, I want to thank the Garden Club especially. Maybe we can have a round of applause for the Garden Club. Switching over now from my hat as chairman of the Building and Grounds Committee to my hat as chairman of the Program Committee. If anybody wants a hat, by the way, I have some available. We've been very lucky. I think maybe Will can remember. We have a dozen or more talks that we've given in this series.
I'm trying to remember. This
14,
may be number
12, 14, something like that.
maybe number. I think this is number 16 or 17. This one.
16 or 17? Okay. One of the things that gives this organization, I think, life, I mean, we're doing this for the restoration project and it's kind of coming to an end. But what gives us life is the fact that we are preserving history, we're bringing parts of history together that nobody's ever really looked at or examined before. We've saved history from being lost, and we're doing this in a couple of ways. One is we have a very active committee that is doing oral history, and we have 25 tapes, of which some of the tapes have several people interviewed on. So many of you here have been interviewed. If you have been in Bethany for some time and you have life experiences that are worth recording, so that we'll know and future generations will get a better picture of what life was like in Bethany in the past, and not in the distant past, not even 100 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago. This is very important history because it's the kind of history that can easily get lost. We don't want that to happen. So we've been active in recording history. We've been active in this 16 or 17 or 18 talks that we've given that we have videotaped and which are all available in the library. We tried very hard to just stay with Bethany history. Bethany history for Bethany people. And it brings you out and it preserves our heritage. Each one of these tapes, each one of these talks is sort of like a chapter in a history of Bethany. I don't know if you thought about it that way, but we feel this is very important. Before I get to introducing tonight's speaker, who's waiting in the wings and probably waiting for me to get out of here, tonight's topic is going to be Bethany Online. We have several other people who have, I won't say they volunteered to talk to you folks, but they, for some reason or another, they haven't said no. So I'm going to give you a quick preview of coming attractions. In October of 1998, we're going to have Otto Schaefer, who's the chief advisor for land for the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority. Is going to give us a talk on the New Haven Water Company in Bethany. He's going to talk about the water company coming in the 1870s and 80s and 90s, buying up land, tearing down farmhouses, building dams, and what they did in the last 100 years, over 100 years, has really shaped what Bethany looks like today. A great deal. So I'm looking forward to that. In February of 1999, Russ Von Baron, with help from his wife, we think that probably Janice is going to be giving us, maybe a little different point of view. Wouldn't be uncharacteristic. That team is going to give us a talk on someone that's very near and dear to those of us who remember her, Alice Wooding. We have lots of photos, just a lot of stuff, and I think everybody can look forward to that. In June of 1999, Christine Sullivan is going to do a talk on Troop 1 in Bethany, although it'll eventually talk about other Boy Scout troops in Bethany. But Troop 1 started in Bethany in 1935. Lots of people, some people here were in it recently or in the distant past. We're going to be looking for photographs on any of these items. If you have photographs that you can just lend us, even for a couple of days, that my son Will can make a slide on it by taking a photograph of it, I think we can have a very, very interesting talk. October 1999. See, with a historical society, you don't always have to be looking at the past. You can look into the future, too. We're going to have Don Menzies, who gave a talk in Woodbridge on this subject, give a talk on William A. Clark, matchmaker and Yankee inventor. He lived in Bethany, but then the Woodbridge line was changed, and he ended up being stuck in Woodbridge. Sorry, Polly. A couple of you probably have seen this in Woodbridge. Because this whole industrial complex of matchmaking took place right on the Woodbridge-Bethany line, right on Layton's Brook, which we think is a very important topic for Bethany people as well. So he's agreed to bring that to you. February of 2000, we don't have anybody yet, so please see me after the meeting. All right, the person that's speaking tonight tonight needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. And that's Dwight Johnson. He's a lifelong Bethany resident. I've never met anybody that's Dwight's enemy, so you can check with me after the meeting on that one too. Very well liked, well respected, with a bit of experience with communication. He has retired from the Southern New England Telephone Company, although it seems that they can't do without him from time to time, and they get him back to see what work is really like. Anyway, without any further ado, our speaker for the evening.
Thank you very much, all you brave people leaving your air conditioners to come and hear me talk. That makes me feel pretty good. I hope it's going to be well worth it. First of all, I'd like to talk about Alexander Graham Bell, because without him, we wouldn't have a telephone here today. Alexander, here's an early edition of this was back in the 1800s. Jeff Lange let me borrow this, and we had it tape made for it. And here is Alexander Graham Bell. Was 29 when he invented the telephone in 1876. He was a primary teacher of the deaf, and one of his backers was his father of his deaf bride. One of his first decisions was to control quality by making all telephones and leasing them to local and regional franchisers. At that time, telephones were leased in pairs. For example, connecting phones and offices with one another. Bell is shown here with the first switchboard. It's pretty hard to see it because it's kind of light here right now. This was in the early 1890s. Here's a photo of Bell's first phone. There it is. Okay. Bell's first phone, a single handpiece was alternated between mouth and ear. The clear conversations were not the rule. Of course, that's you can see how kind of crude it was, but it really did the job at that time. January 28, 1878, 21 venturous citizens of New Haven became the world's first subscribers to the telephone exchange service for $1.50 a month. They could talk with each other, provided two other conversations were already using at the switchboard to its full capacity. The first effort to control customers was in the form of a small 4-page flyer, which was distributed to 1,500 businesses and residents. The first step was to hire professional canvassers who were paid $1.50 for each signed contract. They soon obtained 20 more customers, enough to open the exchange. In less than a month after the founding of the New Haven Exchange grew by 128% to 21 to 50 customers. And this is the first exchange. The first directory, which came out in February 1878, and it was a forerunner of the Yellow Pages listing. And it had 11 residents, customers. The business customers were grouped in categories, such as boarding stables, meat and fish markets, and miscellaneous groups containing the Register, the Yale News, the police, the post office, and the Clinic Yacht Club. By 1880, they had the right to build exchanges in any part of Connecticut and western Massachusetts. And more important, they had the right to interconnect their exchanges. They were not slow to exercise these rights. Early toll lines from Bridgeport, New Haven, and Hartford brought a good return, and toll lines were built and promoted everywhere. In Bridgeport, they hired Connecticut's first woman operator. Her name was Marjorie Gray. This daring experiment was so successful, by the mid-1880s, women had replaced most of the often, listen to this word, rude boy operators. It was a constant struggle to finance this expansion. while meeting the day-to-day expenses of the business, particularly the growing payroll. Wages ran from $5 to $9 a week, and a night operator who dozed between calls on the 9 to 6 a.m. shift received $15 a month. These wages, of course, were a 6-day week, and the local manager usually covered the switchboard on Sunday nights. There were new expenses too. Increasingly, property owners were objecting to telephone wires being to their trees, attached to their trees and buildings, so poles had to be bought and set. In 1882, SNET took over Connecticut Telephone. When SNET started, the future looked very bright indeed. It was operating 24 exchanges, including Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee, all interconnected by toll lines, with a total of 3,634 subscribers. SNET made the decision to limit its operation to Connecticut, having sold the 3 Massachusetts exchanges to the American Bell in return for needed capital. The reason they named it the Southern Union Telephone Company was because of the 3 towns outside of Connecticut, and they elected not to change that name after that was signed. Instead of calling it the Connecticut Telephone Company, they wanted to keep it as is. Here's one of the early telephones. It's pretty hard to see, but that could have been used just about the time. And here, of course, is I would like to tell you about prominent citizen Tyler Davidson. Tyler was born 1872 and died 1952. He was a farmer, businessman, teacher, and town official. His father was Samuel G. Davidson. He was born in 1836, and he died in 1923, and he was also a selectman in Bethany. His mother was Sarah Green Davidson, and Tyler's education started at the Smith School and at Stone's Business College. He ran the telephone exchange from 1898 to 1907, which I naturally will go on and further into my talk here. He was first selectman from 1919 to 1923. He taught at Smith and Gate schools. He was a member of the building committee in 1934 that erected this building. He was an unofficial town historian. He was a grand juror. He was a judge at the town court. He was a library board member and master of the Bethany Grange. And he did a few things, didn't he? And he was also a representative in the legislature. And he presented a bill that made civics mandatory in the public schools. And Tyler had 2 daughters and 1 son. And he had no grandchildren. He was a Sunday school teacher. And when he was 26, he came down with the measles. And it broke his 9-year, 1 month of perfect attendance. When he was 29 years old, he sang at a funeral of Willis Doolittle at the residence of Dwight Johnson, my great uncle. And here's a few short stories about him as a farmer. Here's his signature and his father's. Book of references, he was a man that kept track of everything that he ever did. He was very methodical. And a few short stories about him as a farmer. When his son Roland was 28, he persuaded his dad to buy a tractor to replace their oxen and update their other farm equipment. Here's a picture of Tyler, his aunt, and his father Samuel on the right. This is a beautiful picture. This has really been Will and Bob said that they just found this one. And this is at their home. in the early 1930s, and this is, everyone can recognize these pictures at the Tyler Davidson residence on the corner of Darrington, Litchfield. And here's one of his billheads. It was Minnow Brook Farm. And this picture is on the corner of Litchfield in Darrington, right across from his present home. And I think a few people recognize this picture. In the early 1930s, Warren Downs, Minnie's husband, his deceased husband, and Harlan Tuttle, brother of Helen Riley, worked 12 hours, 6 days a week, and they alternated Sundays, milking cows and other chores. And they both worked until the late 30s. In 1937, Jerry Downs worked there at 14 years old, and he left Jerry in charge of the farm while he went to Ohio, leaving Jerry in charge. He had to milk 16 cows, and Roland was also there to take care of the finances. And also, Tyler was a surveyor, and Jerry Towns helped him survey property on the corner of Amity and Hilldale. Now about Tyler and the Davidson Exchange. It's hard to believe that he had time to even start this. On November 22nd, this is the gate school where he taught. These are the children. It's pretty hard to really see that. But Tyler's on the left. But I think a lot of the pictures you can't see are displayed here on the table that you can see afterward. And this is a Smith school that he also taught. This is before he started the telephone exchange. And here's the class. He was probably holding his daughter. And man standing on the right is his name Harold Beecher. Father and their son's daughter's right here, Arlene Durley. Was her dad. They must have been very good friends. Here's a close-up picture, which is very nice. And this is the first steps and fractures meeting by illustrations, and they had them copyrighted. And this is a Sunday school schedule. The date is 1895. And Mr. Davidson was a teacher. And also, you can see he was on the school board committee that erected the school at the time. Now, of course, it's made the town hall. And there's a lot of prominent names up there. Here's a dedication at the Bethany School building, right where we're sitting right now. And also, he was a town judge. And this is the library. And these are the charter members of the library. There's Mr. Woodward, Tyler, there's many, and there's too numerous to mention, but everyone here, not everyone, but most people here probably that have lived here in Bethany all their lives know most of these people in this picture. And this is the Davidson telephone system. Tyler started on November 22nd, 1897. Tyler left New Haven to go to New York. While he was there, he visited a man named Mr. Terry, who had a telephone exchange company. The trip took about 3 weeks, and when he came home on December 14th, he complained about gaining 5 pounds and tipping the scale to 139 pounds. On December 27th, 1897, 2 weeks later, Tyler took a trip to Meriden and bought 2 telephones. And when he started cutting down cedar poles at the Lebanon Swamp, he came across an obstacle. Mr. John Thomas kept a sailboat on a pond at the Lebanon Swamp, and he objected about him cutting the cedars down. So Tyler had to convince him that the cedars will grow again. And he had to sell this new invention to his neighbors, of course, because they were kind of hesitant about getting telephones. And one good selling point was when the Wheeler Beecher house over on Amity near Falls was on fire, and a neighbor saw smoke, alerted neighbors by telephone, and when the owner came home, he found 10 men dousing the fire. So that was a good selling point for people to get a telephone. And when I was starting to talk about how he kept track of all his the items that he ever purchased, he was really quite good at doing all that. And so now what I would like to do is start. Here's one of the early details. This is probably one of the first phones that was used, because on the bottom you see a box underneath. That's where trisulfide was kept. On the right is the crank that made the, that actually made the bell ring at the other people's homes. This is quite an ad. Like I said before, they had to get people interested to purchase a telephone. Here's an doctor's office. And here, Dwight. Right off the bat here, there's a doctor's office, and they wanted to sell everyone on the feeling of getting a telephone. And here's a gal that's got a problem with a leak. So of course the telephone is very handy for that. And here's the Wheeler Beecher house on the foot of Falls Road. That's the one that was caught on fire, and it was doused by 10 men. And that proved it's worth to have a telephone. This is the telephone subscribers. Now, Tyler made up general rules and regulations for these people that got their telephones. Of course, in one of the items, it said, don't call while others are talking unless you're sure they're using the line at least 5 minutes, in which case they should yield to you. After calling, wait for a short ring and reply. And when calling, give short ring and reply before taking down. The receiver is stand with mouth close to transmitter when speaking. To call central, you press up on the button and turn the crank rapidly, long enough to count 3. To call parties on the home line, which I'll explain later on, which the home line and the central line are, make long rings same length as for the central, and short rings are very short. Number 5, when asked central to be connected to another line, hold the receiver to your ear till you hear from the other party. And don't fail to give a very short, quick ring to show central when you are through talking. And parties are requested not to use this system after 9 p.m. Isn't that interesting? Unless message is very important. Lines must not be used during electrical storms, and having placed lightning arresters at each phone and caution as above, and I take no risk as to any possible damage which might occur to subscribers from lightning. Subscribers will be expected to see if line is working in order as soon as practical, after each electrical storm. And if the bells do not ring upon trial, to replace the fuses in the lightning arresters with new ones. I guess that didn't have any telephone repairmen to do that at the time, so the customers had to do that themselves. Subscribers sending messages via Beacon Falls or Bethany post office, this was in 1903, over lines must pay regular charges on said lines and 10 cents additional to Julia's Hart. She was the postmistress at the post office. To save confusion, subscribers are requested to make all payments to me as an agent. And non-subscribers are requested to pay 10 cents extra for the use of this system when sending messages as above, and make full payment to the party whose phone was used. As said, party or subscriber will be held responsible payment for all messages sent from his home. All parties renting or using phones on this system are hereby understood to do so in compliance with the above rules and regulations. Signed, Tyler D. Davidson, proprietor. And this was the first subscribers: John Twitchell, Dan Doolittle, Jasper Todd. And this is a picture of the first switchboard or near it. In fact, this came from one of the stamps that I was sent from the Pioneers. And Willie Britton had it blown up, and it came out pretty nice. It was like a 2x2 stamp when he started. And here's part of Bethany, where the different lines were sent to different homes. And here's the Tyler Davidson house. And on the right, it's pretty hard to see that, but as you're facing it, on the right you can see wires coming in. And this is a Lebanon swamp. Let's see. And here's Amity Road. And here's Fairwood Road coming out, and the airport was here. And this is where he gathered all of his white cedars to build all his telephone poles. In fact, they were pretty good size because they were 25 to 30 footers. And here's a picture of the first telephone truck. It's quite different than it is today. There's a picture up here in the front that shows the different years where they progressed. And this is one of the early, and that was what they used for everything. And this picture is well known by all telephone people. There's a lineman in snowshoes out there checking the lines with his meter. And this is Samuel Davidson, Tyler's dad. And as you can see on the right, this is where one of the lines came into Tyler's house. This is where the switchboard operator was located. And these are insulators. The one on the right was probably used earlier because it doesn't have as much of a groove on it to hold the wires. And they're insulators for the wires that were going between the different poles. And this is more of a recent model. And this is probably a picture of an early, because telephones, don't forget, when they first started, they were changing so rapidly because the quality was so much better as years went on. But to start, they were, the receiving and transmission were very, very poor because the lines were, what they did, like today when we install a telephone or you have a pair of wires. But at that time, they ran one wire, and then they grounded
they put a ground on either end of it. So what was happening, when they were talking, it would be like a hum plus, and they were trying to hear the other party, so a lot of times you had to speak very, very loud, and the quality was very, very poor. But at the time, it was great because that's all they had. And the battery, like I said before, was kept in the bottom of the phone, and then as you crank, that's what made some of the people, if you were some of the people here, if they were in the Army, we had magneto sets that you cranked, and you could ring the bell and also talk over them. These were basically the same way. There's a gal. You see how close she's talking to it? That's how you had to stand because the transmitters were not that good as they are today. And this was made, I think, when Tyler was getting ready for the centennial, because you can see the date is 1931. He probably wanted to let people know because he was such a fanatic about keeping records about every little thing that it was quite interesting that he did that. Janice Van Der was telling me the other day that this is in later years. He used to stop at the farm after he didn't have the cows, and when he came in late, your father would keep the milk down in the well to keep it cold. So when he came home, coming up Litchfield Turnpike, he reached down the well and got his milk and paid. And when he left, he had a little book that he kept track of everything that he ever had expenditures. He really knew everything right to the penny. And this was the rules and regulations. I think I read this before. Okay, now I'd like to start with the telephone subscribers. This was the one on line 1. And Tyler's the first one. And we'll go up and down here. We've got leaving Tyler's. We're going up Litchfield Turnpike. So the first installation was the Marcus Young house where the Harrisons used to live. And the next installation was the Frank and Wilbur Perkins, where the Winters now live. And then the Dwight Johnson house was the next installation, and where the Weisses lived for many, many years. And the next home that he put the phone in was the William Henry Downs home, Tuttle and the Tuttle Riley, who lived right out in front of us, right on the corner of Carrington and Litchfield. Then Samuel Downs, and the Cart Mills lived after he was living there. Then the Harp and Hotchkiss is where the Ives now live. And then the Walter Doolittle house across from the trailer park on Amity Road is where Walter Doolittle lived. And John Twitchell was on the corner of Amity and Edwards Road. This is going back to the trailer's house. And then line 2, we only had 2 lines on that. This is the house that I mentioned the first time. This is the Winter house. And this is the Vice house. And this is the Tuttle Riley. This is the Cart Mill house. And this is the Ives house. And this is the house on John Twitchell's house, corner of Amity and Edwards Road. This is it. I'm sorry, this is the, I've got it mixed up. This is the John Twitchell house, the corner of Amity and Edwards. In line 2, there were only 2 customers, 2 subscribers on there. Justin Cole and Jasper Todd. And I think many people recognize this house. It's a Stanley Downs. It looks like Tucker's pickup truck is out front when that was taken, or Timer was born. And this is a Jasper Todd, Carrington, across from Gaylord Mountain Road. This is line 3. Okay, this is the John Hinman house, corner of Amity Road and Sergeant Drive, right up near the airport. And this is the Carell house that was torn down, and this was right next to it. And this is the Mansfield house and the Fairwood and Falls Road. And Joseph Swandler had a telephone up there. And of course, this is the Samuel Woodward house, where the Sandells live. And now we're going to line 4. Okay, this is Wilbur Lounsbury on Litchfield, across from the Methodist Cemetery. And this is the Jerome Downs Senior's house on Litchfield Turnpike, north of Hatfield Road. And this is Charlie and Jesse Beecher, corner of Bethany Road at Litchfield. This was only a small little house, and then it was added to later on. And this is a Thomas McClure house on Litchfield Turnpike, where the Gilmores once lived. And this is Dr. Richard McClure. This is a Calhoun house, corner of Sperry and Hatfield Hill. And this is Charles McGinn, where the Niedermans live right now. It's on the corner of Sperry and Tuttle. And this is quite a picture going up Wooding Hill Road. You're right at the bridge. And the house on the right was torn down, and there isn't much to know about that one. And this is the Jerome Downs Jr. house. It's Wooding Hill across from Porter Hill. And Tucker Downs was born here. And of course, this is a well-known house in Bethany. This is the William Wooding house, where Alice spent all of her life. And you can see the wire that's coming in. There's a little bracket on the side where you can see that's very, very old. In fact, when I used to work in the area putting telephones in, Alice was quite a gal. She always hit me up for a roll of tape. She used to splice out her own wires, you know. She was more fun than a barrel of monkeys. Yeah, she was quite a lady. And now we're coming to the 5th line. Okay, this is the Frederick Beecher house, which is Saxton's. going to Hilldale and Carrington. And this is a beautiful picture. This is going up Bethany Road to the center of town, right where the churches are. This was another installation for Reverend Lewis Morris at the rectory of the Episcopal Church. And of course, this is Ransom Hitchcock. This is the Hinman house that was just torn down. It was the first paid telephone was installed here. If you can see, on either end of the porch, it looks like there's a sign telling people that there's a public telephone. And of course, this house is Dwight Johnson. Down the Indy Road, this across from Walter Valesky's. And this is the Dwight, it's the Edwin Clark's house. This is Marcarelli's on Old Amity Road. And this is Edwin Pardee's house. Bethmore and North of Clay. He really had to run a lot of wires. I mean, it was quite, when you think about what he had to work with many years ago. I mean, we take so much for granted with the automation we have today. First of all, he had to go out in the swamp and cut down all these poles and haul them out, and it was unbelievable. He ran a line to get out of Bethany. All these lines that he put in, on line 1, when he finished, everyone on line 1, they only could call themselves. They couldn't call anyone else, even when they had them all put in. If he went from line 1 to line 2, they had to go through the switchboard, and a little key would drop, telling Tyler, who was ever operating the switchboard, that there was somebody that wants to get in touch with someone, say on line 5 or line 4. But anyone on line 1, they could call one another. But now to get out of Bethany, that was a big thing. That's when he ran the line from his house over Hilldale, over Falls, all the way to Beacon Falls, across the river, into the railroad station. And he cut in his line so that people could call to New Haven, whatever. That was quite a task when you think about it. It's about 4.5 or 5 miles of wire that he had to run. Plus he had to set all the telephone poles to get there. It's hard to imagine doing all that work. It was quite an endeavor because reading about him, it was hard to believe that he found time to put a telephone system in because he did so many things. So it was enjoyable doing it. And now comes this personal handbook he had. He used to. This was the DR on the left is done a doctor. It says debtor and creditor. This would happen to be Samuel Woodward. And you can see how he was so methodical about keeping his records. He kept track of everything, expenditures, and he was just quite a person that way. And the cost was, by the way, to put the phone in was for free, and the charge was $1 a month, $12 a year for a telephone. And this is a picture of Samuel Woodward. He was also first elected in Bethany. And this is how he kept track of all his customers. You can see all the names. It's pretty hard to see them, but you can see a lot of the $12 were there. There was like 28 subscribers when he finished. And then comes the sad news. In 1906, Tyler went to see Morris Tyler of SNET. And he wanted to find out if SNET would buy him out. But it was no avail. Morris Tyler was not very cordial with Tyler Davidson about it. On January 31st, 1907, Tyler went out to all the subscribers with a letter notifying his discontinuation of the exchange. On July 5th, 1907, SNET installed a phone into Tyler's house, and Tyler signed a contract for 1 year. This is a phone during that time. And this is a picture of Morris Tyler of SNET. This is another ad that was used to entice people to use the telephone. And this is quite interesting. It's what to do with your cord. Keep your cord clear of steam valves and cosmodors. It's quite interesting. And what cords cause service troubles that are likely to occur at any time as chemical action continues even after the cord has been dried. This type of trouble is very difficult for repairmen to locate. And this is a candlestick phone that's like they call the Elliott Ness phone. There was one up here that Chet Lange let me borrow right on our display table. That was really convenient to hold. And this is an early bell box that was installed that Chet Lange let me borrow to show you. And you can see how well constructed the box was. It's all dovetailed and made of oak. And actually, if we put battery to it, it would probably ring today. And this is an old 202 telephone. This came in probably in the 30s. And of course, there was no bell box, so a bell had to be installed to make it ring. And this is quite an interesting picture. This is on the causeway on Downs Road. And you can see the arms of wire that were there. Of course, Southern Union Telephone Company, I don't know what year this is, but it probably was in the 30s and 40s when, or earlier, when the phone company ran those lines up. In those arms of wire, there's 10 pins on them, so there's 10 wires on each one. And by that time, the grounded ringing wasn't, it wasn't being used at that time. So the conversations were a lot clearer then. And this is a nice picture. I think Tyner will, the third one from the left, that's Irene Downs. That's Tyner's mom. She was a funny lady. They do it very well. And I don't know if that's her sister on her left or not. Only probably Tyner knows. And here's Tyler now on his 80th birthday. He died in 1952. And here's his gravestone. He's Barrington Cemetery. Quite an ad, huh? Hello, Central, give me heaven. That's cute. This is a cutie, isn't it, huh? Making fun of Mrs. Bell's invention. Well, I want to thank Jerry Downs, Will and Bob Brenton for assisting me, and James Brenton for making the goodies while we were gathering all the information about this great man, and Chet Lange for letting me borrow some of his antique equipment for your viewing, and also I can't forget Penny.
I don't think Dwight's ever gone that long without mentioning the Marine Corps. Enjoyed it, Dwight. Thank you very much. It brings us up on that 100-year anniversary, 1898, this year, 100 years. It's quite an accomplishment when you think of what we got for telephones nowadays.
Question.
Shoot.
When selling away from the telephone brought the one wire out to his house, did that then tie into the rest of the system, or they start all over again?
They didn't use any of Tyler's equipment. He was very put out about that because he thought he was going to sell to them. SNAP just came in and it really left a bad taste in Tyler's mouth about that. Because all the work he did, he got no respect. Tell you. In fact, I went down to our telephone company in Patterson. Hi, that's better. What happened, as far as the wire goes, to get the Beacon Falls, Tyler had to run that himself to tie it in. That was done on the second number 2 line, because otherwise they couldn't get out of Bethany. So everything that Tyler did was just torn down. So of course that hurt his feelings. I mean, 9 years of work, and he kind of thought that he would probably go on further. But things were changing, and Southern Wing and Tail were moving in quite rapidly. And they got the backers and whatever. And poor Tyler, and like when I went to the SNEP to find out about Tyler, they had nothing about him, which hurt me very bad. So what I'd like to do after I'm all said and done with this is gather all this information and give it to Bob Patterson so he can put it in his archives. I mean, why not? But like I said, I mentioned before, he was a man that had so much talent in everything he did. He taught 2 schools. He was a judge. There was nothing the man couldn't do. Not many people go through life and accomplish all that he's ever done. Things haven't really changed. Things are happening like that today, and they're just survival, and it's money. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. I couldn't find anything about that. Of all the things like your husband Jerry and Harlan Tuttle. Warren Downs, those are the only people I found that really did any work for him back then. Now, I don't know. We couldn't find anything about that. Any other questions?
Where did you procure it?
Well, he had a place in Meriden that he used to get all his equipment from. His telephones, his wire, his pliers, everything he needed, he obtained from there. And he kept records of everything he ever purchased. So it was really great for us to have access to all this. Any other questions? Yeah, he made money doing it, but I think he must have had some backing from his dad, I would say, because, he was a school teacher and he did other things, but of course, $1 was worth a lot of money then. He did make a profit, yeah. questions? Thanks you all for coming. It's been enjoyable. Thank you very much.
And I hope you all take the time to come up front and look at all the exhibits up here. Also, we have food in the back. And I can remember in the early 40s, I used to chase Tyler's cows in on the way home from school. After they were in, I went up to the house. I reported the house. The cows were locked in the barnyard. He'd go in, he'd open up his book and write down, timer down, 10 cents, and I'd go running